For the students in your classroom that are cognitively and academically diverse, there are three big instructional strategies to help them. First, we define what is an exceptional child. Now, all children are exceptional, but the official definition of exceptional children are students who differ from the norm. They either are above the norm in our gifted population, or they are below the norm and struggle in a cognitive or academic way. These are the children that benefit from individualized education programs to meet their needs. So they may have an IEP that you learned about in Education 180 that a teacher would have to follow. But more cases than not, it's just up to the teacher to individualize and differentiate instruction in the classroom to meet their needs, whether it be academically or emotionally and behaviorally. So I'm going to go through the three strategies, and for each strategy we have some sort of visual to look at as well. The first one is inquiry-based learning. And this is an instructional strategy that is based on the constructivist approach. This is a strategy that allows students to learn through questioning and discovery. We want, as the teacher, to give them open-ended activities where they get to explore and play, and the teacher is the guide or the mentor to facilitate what's going on. Now, it sounds very open-ended that you would just give some children some materials and see what happens, but most inquiry-based learning take excessive preparation to make sure that we are giving them an activity where the outcome or their discovery will end up showing what you want them to learn. An example of this is when you set up a science experiment or some sort of sorting activity. You have to think about what is the end product you want them to have when they finish discovering or playing, and then work your way backwards. And how will you set that up? Examples of inquiry-based learning would be some sort of active learnings, especially learning centers and games, experiments, and experiments don't just have to be in the area of science. It can be a math experiment, it can be a language or literacy or a writing experiment. Sorting activities, which we will do a lot of in here, are considered inquiry-based learning, or you have to figure something out first and then learn about it second. And last, anything discovery-based. So if those of you that are with young children, a lot of times we have centers where they can discover and explore. Those are actually inquiry-based learning. Now, the video that you're going to see is done at a library instructional time, and the students are creating presentations to show what they've learned, and they have to do a lot of open-ended research and integration of technology to explore community and what is out in their world, in their community, in, I believe, goods and services. I believe that's what they're exploring. So check that out and see how this is open-ended, that every group may come to a slightly different end conclusion, but they're all similar and they're all learning similar things. It's a great strategy because it gives children freedom to explore and find things that apply to them, and you'll see they're having a lot of fun. So check out the inquiry-based learning video below. The second strategy we're going to talk about is not a teaching method like our inquiry-based learning. It's a program that schools in Pennsylvania and actually most of our country are doing in response to meeting students' individual needs. It's called Response to Intervention, and it's also known as RTI, and there's a second model that some school districts are going under the name RTI-2. It's basically just a specific way of looking at the program they've chosen. But this program takes teacher assessment data, so they'll do some kind of assessment of their students, and then they look at where the students fall within their classroom and within their grade level, and they tier them. And if you look at the graphic below, we see a green tier of the triangle, a yellow tier, and a red tier. The students that are most at risk or they do the most poorly on the teacher assessment are put in that top green level. And this is 1 to 5% of students, and these are the students that really need a lot of help. And they're going to be placed with special support teachers in the area of special ed or Title I or the ESL, ELL programs. These are not your strugglers in a regular classroom. This is severe deficiencies or students that are way behind. The second tier is the yellow tier, and this is where we have some at-risk students, and you may have some ELL or ESL students that are a little more proficient. This is about 5 to 10% of the population, and these are students that need explicit instruction in a specific area to catch up with their peers. The last tier is about 80 to 90% of your students, and this is our general education population. These are the students that are right on track and will continue to benefit from practice, but not necessarily need support in any specific area. For this population, you will see them receive either practice time daily, or they will receive enrichment in an area that they have shown to grow most from. What RTI looks like in a school is after the teachers and administrators do the assessments and tier the students, they break out each day for 30 minutes. This 30 minutes can be called many different things. Some people call it RTI time. Some people call it win time. I've heard it called many different things. But if you see students going every day 30 minutes somewhere different than their own classroom, that's RTI time. And what happens is the kiddos in that top green tier are going to go with a specialist or a support teacher. So it gives them an extra 30 minutes with their special education teacher or their ELL teacher or their Title I teacher. The kiddos that are in yellow will also go with some sort of specialist or be placed with a classroom teacher that will work very closely in small groups with these students on anything that they need to catch up on. The last tier is the greatest population of our school, and they're the kids that are on track. And during their 30 minutes, they will receive practice in the area that a teacher or administrator feels they would benefit from mostly. Or for those kiddos that need enrichment, this is where they would go with their gifted teacher. It's where they'd go with the higher level math teacher or the higher level reading teacher and be working on more challenging tasks than their peers. And that gives every student what they need. And that is what we call response to intervention. So it's not something you would lesson plan as a strategy, more as a program that would be implemented in most schools in the public school system. If you are a response to intervention teacher, you would have students for those 30 minutes that you would lesson plan specifically for. Okay, and our last category is differentiated instruction. And if you think back earlier in this presentation, we saw our differentiated learner. And basically, differentiated instruction is something that you do as a teacher. Every different learner has a different need. So based on the assessments that you've done, both formal and informal, you have to meet a child's needs to enhance their learning process. So some examples of how you would differentiate for students would be on their readiness level. When you're doing a lesson, are they ready for it, or do you need to do a different lesson to prepare them for that? We see that a lot with our English language learners or our culturally diverse students. You will differentiate based on students' abilities. So you may have all the students learning about bugs. If you think back to our first weekly reading, some of the students, though, might be reading an easy book about bugs, and some might be reading a middle level, and some might need enrichment and be in a really challenging chapter book about bugs. So you're differentiating for their abilities. You differentiate for student interest. You need to find out what motivates and excites your students and create lessons around that. And the last one is really basic, but your children's learning style. If they're an auditory learner, then you need to have a part of your lesson that is more auditory. If they're a visual learner, the same thing is true, making your lesson visual. And those kinesthetic learners, you need to integrate activities that are hands-on for them. A good teacher is differentiating in many ways in one lesson, and the whole group is benefiting from this differentiation. The video clip that is in the differentiated instruction section shows a teacher that is doing a sorting activity, which actually falls under the inquiry-based learning, but she's explaining how different groups are sorting different words because she is differentiated on their ability level and their readiness level. So you can watch that video clip and see the difference in the differentiation. So everyone is getting what they need, and most importantly, everyone is successful. If we set students up for failure, they lose their confidence, they lose their motivation, and they don't want to learn. When we differentiate and we can give each child a task that challenges them enough but allows them to be successful, then we're helping create their love of learning and constructing all the meaning to grow as a learner. And that's what differentiated instruction does. So those are our 3 strategies. The inquiry-based learning strategy is one that you could choose for your cultural language project coming up. The other 2 are not something that you'd use for lesson planning at this point. I hope that helps explain the information for you.